Good morning. I'd wager a guess that most of us here today are at least somewhat familiar with the story of Lazarus. We know the story of this man who's been dead, and Jesus miraculously brought him back, even after 4 days in the tomb, and the amazement of the people who were around him. But one part of this story that we tend to overlook is just a small phrase, and it's the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus began to weep. Jesus began to weep. And it says multiple times throughout this gospel passage that Jesus was disturbed or disturbed in spirit. And it always sounds odd because we know that Jesus knows he can bring Lazarus back. So it's not that Lazarus is gone and he is weeping for a dead friend. Because Jesus knows that death is not the end. Jesus already knows this. So why then would Jesus weep? It's because Jesus was so moved by all the other people who were mourning. Jesus was surrounded by a group of people who were all mourning. This is the first time in the Gospels that it really talks about people mourning a death. Other times when someone is dead, it's something that happened distantly. And Jesus is with a small group of people when he brings the little girl back, who he said was only sleeping. But this time he is surrounded by a crowd of mourners. And I can tell you that being an empathetic person myself, even when I officiate a funeral for someone I never knew, it is always emotional. Not because I personally am mourning the loss of the person who died, but because I am surrounded by people who are grieving. And I cannot help but take on that grief. How much more would Jesus, who loves us far more than I am capable of loving people, how much more would he feel that pain, that sorrow, that grief? Because if we know anything about Jesus, it's that he doesn't want anyone to suffer. He doesn't want anyone to be in pain. He doesn't want anyone to grieve. And yet here he is surrounded by grief. And he began to weep because he cared so much about the people surrounding him. How often do we weep for our world? How often are we moved to tears for the plight of those around us? I fear we've become desensitized to suffering. Because news story after news story, Facebook post after Facebook post, we see so much suffering that I fear as a society we have lost the ability to be moved to tears by it. It feels in many ways that we have run out of tears to cry. That ought not to be so. Because we have fellow children of God who are living in fear at this very moment. We have brothers and sisters who are being oppressed, who see their rights taken away day after day, who are fighting for the right to just be recognized as a human being. And our society can't even give them that. That should move us to tears. There are people in our very city, in our very neighborhoods, who you may know or you may not know, but they are living with grief as a constant companion. They don't know if today is going to be the day that someone takes their anger out on them. They don't know if today is going to be the day that some judicial court decision is going to be made that is going to negatively impact their lives. They don't know if today is going to be the day that they are deemed legally not a human because of how they identify. They don't know. But there is a place that will love them and welcome them for who they are, just as they are. And that should make us move. Today is All Saints Sunday. The day that we remember that we are connected to all the saints who have gone before us. All the saints, big and small. And we remember that we are here only by the grace of those who have gone before us. Whatever rights we have are because others have fought for them for us. Some more than others, but certainly that we live in America today. A literal war was fought for us to be a country. For those of us who are people of color, a literal war was fought for us to not be treated as property. For those of us who happen to identify as a gender different from what was assigned to them as at birth. For those of us who are attracted to a gender that is not the stereotypical norm. For those of us who, for whatever reason, are going through suffering, wars are being fought, maybe not with guns and bullets, but wars that are being fought in courts and in homes across dinner tables for the right to be treated as someone who is worthy to be loved. We should weep for all the wars that had to be fought, all the wars that are still being fought. And then we should be so moved to actually do something about it. We should be so moved that we go out into the world and do everything in our power, that our fellow brothers and sisters across the globe will finally know that there is at least someone, at least one place that sees them for who they are and says, you are loved, you are worthy. You have a place you can call home. And so we're going to renew the vows made for us at baptism. We're going to remember what it is we said we would do or that others said we would do on our behalf. These tenets that hold us to what we believe we are to do in the world. To continue in fellowship. To continue in prayer, to continue to break bread with one another. To resist evil and recognize that we will fail. We will fall into sin, and yet we will recognize that and we will repent and we will come back. We will respect the dignity of every human being. We will love our neighbors as ourselves. We will seek justice for everyone, and all with God's help. So let us stand and reaffirm our faith and renew our baptismal covenant.